Democracy, a philosophy and system designed with the idea that it would be for the people and by the people. Just from this, you think that it would demand a populace knowledgeable in the field of governing. Sadly, here in the United States of America, this is not the case. Many do not have a sufficient grasp on the political landscape or are just outright apathetic. This is due to the rampant problem of political ignorance or the lack of knowledge of politics among the citizenry of the United States. While political ignorance has been around for many years here in the United States, it has arguably become a problem quite recently. According to Jaron Fleming of the Dispatch in his article on voter apathy, he points out a massive contradiction between American democracy in 1840 and American democracy in the present day. Almost every eligible voter in 1840 cared more about what the government did, and voter turnouts were very high. For example, in the 1840 presidential election, it was 80.2%. Astounding for such a young democracy. Now, 160 years later, he says, America is being run by half of its eligible voters. This is quite the phenomenon, because as both information about candidates, access to the polls, and ways for people to speak their mind are much more accessible, what is really allowing only half of Americans to speak their mind? The answer is simple: political ignorance and apathy. Both of these thrive due to the common misconception that your vote doesn't matter, the problem of misinformation and partisanship, and simply the lack of opportunities to learn about politics, especially among students. What is my stance? I believe that this plague, dubbed political ignorance, must be cured at all costs in order for the American nation to survive. This first point is something I see everywhere, and I know some of you have seen it too, and it's the common misconception that your vote doesn't matter, that it doesn't do anything, and it will never change anything. First off, Americans tend to have a low level of political efficacy, which from my time in America, or in the AP comparative class, I learned is the amount of trust you have in your government. Why is this? Could it be something that the government has done wrong? Now, I could name off many things that the government has done wrong, but those reasons are not why Americans are so apathetic. The reasons why Americans are so apathetic towards the vote or towards voting is because the process is simply overcomplicated. Voters are expected to know what a certain candidate stands for, where the polls are, if they can even get to the polls, if they have time to get to the polls. According to Mike Masiak of The Governing in his article on uninformed voting, voters are stuck staring blankly at the polls, just sitting there confused. And voters will cast their votes based on whose name is the coolest, or just a flat-out guess. Many see this process as frustrating, and rightfully so, but the reaction to it isn't, oh, maybe I should learn more, but it's usually just, nah man, I ain't about this. And that is very, very bad if Americans are just giving up like this. Another thing is that your vote matters as much as it did back in the day. While we don't have the same issues as we did in the early days of our republic, we have a whole new plate of new ones. These issues such as healthcare, equal rights/treatment for minority groups, the environment, whatever it is, they all affect you in one way or another. Don't want to pay higher taxes for the government to use for healthcare or the environment? Vote for a candidate who doesn't want to raise said taxes. Do you wish for your minority group to have more representation in government or simply more rights? Vote for a candidate running on that platform. It all revolves around using your vote to get your point through. Sadly, too many Americans just don't take advantage of this. Many are just too apathetic to care. But apathy isn't the only thing plaguing the system. Oh no. Misinformation and overpartisanship also are huge problems in American society. Misinformation, the twisting of information usually so it serves a point, has a unique relationship with partisanship, which is prejudice for a particular cause. Partisans for a specific cause may misinform others to get them on their side or make the other side look bad. And partisanship in America has been increasingly potent in these last few years. Those who are actually into politics are taking steps to polarize American politics. You are made to think there are two sides. You are either Democrat or Republican. You are either liberal or conservative. Please pick one and donate to my PayPal. No, this is not how it should be. Even the Social Democratic Labor Party and the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom compromise to pass bills. What are we doing wrong? Well, we aren't dealing with the problem of partisanship enough. We watch and laugh and disagree or agree or whatever when one side dehumanizes the other. We sit and wait as we are divided. Elias Sonman, a contributor to the Washington Post, sums this up very well on his article on voter apathy and political ignorance. He states that those who are actually into politics are not making the political scene any better at all, and they only preach Team Red or Team Blue. Sadly, this cannot be any closer to the truth. Are we going to have another civil war over partisanship? As of now, no, but let's not get it any closer to that possibility. The problem of misinformation and partisanship has only strengthened due to the lack of opportunities to learn about politics, and that gets me to my next point, that the American school system does not give you enough knowledge about politics. I want you all in the audience to think of something important that you've learned about modern American politics, something very relevant that you've learned in more, ideally, a high school classroom. Do you have trouble doing so? If so, it's not your fault, because the American school system does not require that you know basic knowledge about American politics. This is so detrimental to the voting process, as those who don't know anything because they never learned anything go to the polls and just sit there confused. This candidate is a Democrat. What does he or she stand for? Basic information like that is unknown to too many Americans. According to a survey conducted by the Annenberg Public Policy Center, just 38% of Americans could name all three branches in that survey. On presidential veto powers, barely half of them, 51%, know that a 2/3 vote by Congress is needed to overturn a presidential veto. Only 13% of Americans knew that the Constitution was signed in 1787. Maybe we need to teach more history too. The study also concluded that those who took a civics/government course in high school were more likely to be right. All of this is an indicator that Americans need to take more civics or government courses in high school, and that gets me to my next part, the solution to political ignorance in America. There are two things we can do to improve the situation. One is to allow Americans time off of work to vote. This allows Americans to have the time to vote and could increase the representation of workers within politics. Maybe then their interests can be considered. The other thing I briefly talked about, and it's the requirement of a civics or government course in high school. Ideally, it would be a year-round class that freshmen and juniors would have to take. I believe freshmen and those in their first year of high school should take it because it's a good year to introduce them. It'd probably be a very basic course. And you should take one your third year because by then you should be ready for a more advanced government or class in government. As I said before, those who took a civics/government course did better in that Annenberg survey. And a study by the Public Religion Research Institute, which doesn't only study religion and is nonpartisan, only says one-third of Americans are engaged voters. And when I say engaged, I mean they vote in every election they can. I believe these two solutions can raise the amount of engaged voters. Also, do we really want political ignorance to become a tradition here in America? Those who oppose the solution may think it is bad for the federal government to regulate this, or how are they going to pay for it, that usual question. May I remind you that according to another survey by the Annenberg Public Policy Center, the results of which are shown in this graph, 1/3 of all Americans could not name a single branch in the American government. This alone is proof that we need reform, and we need it now. As I've previously said and proved, America drastically needs a solution to political ignorance. The apathetic nature of Americans seriously harms the system and makes it so only half of Americans can get their voices heard. Misinformation and partisanship draw many Americans away from the political scene, and Americans must be better educated on politics, especially those in secondary school. Overall, the future of America depends on your vote, and this may seem daunting, but it is your duty as a citizen. It all boils down to a simple equation. Your vote equals your voice. And as an American citizen, it is of the utmost importance that you take advantage of such a right.